are those technologies which should be used by many different categories of persons with disabilities as an individualized need. As an individualized need. Adaptive technology includes screen readers, computer screen readers for persons with disabilities, voice overs for persons with visual disabilities, talking books for persons with visual impairments and those with intellectual disabilities, video sign language, and when it comes to online and virtual teaching, we need captions for a sign language interpreter. We learned from the COVID-19 pandemic that online and virtual training and learning is effective. But from some surveys we did during the COVID-19 pandemic, we discovered that learners with disabilities were left out as we adopted online and virtual trainings. And this is why my keynote speech is on effective inclusion of persons with disabilities in open and distance education at all levels. I recognize that a lot of open and distance learning talk is around tertiary education. From the perspective of persons with disabilities, open and distance learning must be from early childhood to tertiary education and lifelong education. Why? From the COVID-19 pandemic, we took a survey and discovered that some educational institutions had already started providing online and virtual teaching and training, even in primary school. But learners with disabilities were left out because of the absence of adaptive technologies. When we come to open and distance learning, we must take into consideration the cost effectiveness of such adaptive technologies. In view of that, we encourage that all institutions which are engaged in open and distance education must provide adaptive technologies to learners or students with disabilities as an individualized support system for their learning. We again think that it is important to have a policy environment that will encourage training institutions to import zero-taxed adaptive technologies. Adaptive technologies, by policy, should be imported tax-free, so that institutions of learning should be able to import for persons with disabilities who prefer distance learning. We also think that peer support is very, very essential to enhance equitable learning and inclusive open distance learning. What is peer support? Persons with disabilities who prefer to be supported by another person of their own identity and choice must be promoted. This is very, very important, especially for learners with intellectual and mental impairments. This is very, very important for persons with visual impairments who require human readers, for persons who are deaf who require sign language interpreters. Distance learning, learning while they are at a place of their own choice, at a home, still requires peer support. This is because of the developmental gaps which still exist in open and distance learning in our country. Lectures are given online, virtually, without a caption of a sign language interpreter. So there is need of a sign language interpreter at home. But who pays for that sign language interpreter? Who pays for the peer support for a person with intellectual disability? If the learning institutions will pay for lecturers, therefore there must be a system to support the family of the learner with a disability to ensure that the support person, if need be, are paid. That is why we are calling for subsidized, open, and distance education for learners with disabilities. Or, if possible, free, open, and distance learning for learners or persons with disabilities, so that that fund, which is reserved from paying the fees, the tuition, and all that, is left to pay for the support person. This is very, very essential. It is very important, again, to ensure that the infrastructure is accessible to all persons with disabilities. This is where you find a mix of distance learning and residential learning, where sometimes the learners are brought together for a short time to face the teachers or trainers. But if the infrastructure of the learning institutions, including, unfortunately, the University of Zambia, which is dangerously inaccessible, This is very, very discouraging for persons with disabilities who prefer open and distance learning, and they would prefer to stay where they are, but that the majority are always absent during residential learning. Why? The infrastructure. It is very, very essential to re-attitudinalize the teaching and training staff. The majority of the training staff, teachers in open and distance learning, are not oriented to inclusive teaching. Just look at yourselves, professors, in your heart. Make your heart have an eye and check yourself. Are you an inclusive professor? Say yes or no in your heart. Say it out aloud. Yes or no?
Yes.
Only one. That is the challenge I'm giving to ourselves as we come to make recommendations from this symposium. How are we going to ensure that we have adaptive technologies in all learning institutions which offer open and distance learning? How are we going to ensure that our infrastructure is accessible? How are we going to ensure that our teaching methodologies, pedagogy is accessible? How are we going to ensure that there is, in terms of funds, support to support persons? Let's bring our thinking together, resources together, our technologies together, ideas together to ensure that we make open and distance learning inclusive and accessible. We can do it if we move from the theoretical to practical practice. I thank you.
A round of applause for our first keynote speaker. That was a thought-provoking speech for us as distance education practitioners. How are we defining inclusive, open and distance learning? We ask ourselves. So as we move on to our next keynote speaker, I'll briefly share his bio, and I know most of us are familiar with Professor Mony. So Professor Mony is an associate professor of inclusive education with a grounding in open distance e-learning, and he has published over 150 journal articles and book chapters in peer-reviewed journals world over. He has vast experience in Odell Quality Assurance Framework, learner support services, and instructional material design and development for Odell. In addition, he was also part of the core teams which developed the following. Firstly, the SADC Odell Monitoring and Evaluation Framework. Secondly, higher education guidelines on open and distance e-learning. Third, Zambian Odell Monitoring and Evaluation Framework, as well as the University of Zambia Odell policy. Additionally, Professor Mony is Assistant Director in charge of postgraduate, and he is also a member of the advisory board of the Network of Open Educational Resources and Multimedia Self-Directed Learning in Southern Africa through Northwest University of South Africa. And lastly, he is a key resource person for the Commonwealth of Learning. So at this point, please allow me to invite Professor Mony. Prof.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
It's always good to speak after
great many have spoken. Dr. Muleya, I want to call him Dr. Muleya, because of the great things that he has done. We've known each other since 2009, and we've worked together in the advocacy movement, even before I joined the University of Zambia. So as you see him in the advocacy movement, we call him WAWA, an abbreviation of Wamundila Muleya. So we pick the first two, so WAWA. So there is nothing that stands on his path. If it's an impediment, it has to fall. Because he's the WAWA. Shall we put our hands together? Having said that, permit me now to get to the diamond anniversary. As a country, we are about to celebrate the diamond anniversary, and you know exactly what it means. It means we've been on this trajectory for 60 years. But there is nothing to show for it insofar as a national open university is concerned. And the question we're asking is why? Why is that the case? So this morning, permit me to just captivate your minds by looking at what others have said regarding education. Education is not a preparation for life, it's life itself. That's according to the famous scholar John Dewey. It's not that we have to prepare students for education, for life, but that the very sense of what you are doing is life itself. So you cannot just trivialize education. Maybe that is not enough. Let's listen to what Barack Obama says when he was doing the State House. He says, the White House, higher education, because this is where we are, higher education cannot be a luxury reserved only for a privileged few. It is an economic necessity for every family, and every family should be able to afford it, every family. So it means every one of us must aspire to attain the highest qualification ever available, if we go by that. If that is not very close out to what we are trying to belabor this morning, maybe let's listen to what Peter Drucker says. Universities, because we're in the East space, universities like ours will not survive. The future is outside the traditional campus like ours, outside the classroom, traditional classroom. Distance learning is coming on fast. That was said many years ago. And slowly we are seeing exactly what this man meant during the time when we had COVID. You saw exactly how we closed our doors and scampered in all directions for safety. But if that is not enough to provoke you this morning, there is another scholar by the name of Aristotle. This great philosopher says, you will never do anything in this life without courage. We need courage. It's the greatest quality of the mind, next to honor. So if we are to do what we will do this morning and beyond, you heard Dr. Wawa say, you cannot expect students from all over to come here and still call it open education. It may not work because of certain impediments that oftentimes we take for granted, but they are littered all over. And these, unfortunately, just make it very difficult for them to have access to this commonwealth we call education. So we need to confront certain things. And one of the things that we'll do today is to exercise our courage. Now, here's the million-dollar question I have for you this morning. What's the potential market demand and economic impact of a national open education university? In other words, I'm saying, if we were to have our own national open distance education university, which is paid by the public, what will it be its impact vis-a-vis the socio-economic spectrum of life? That's $1 million question. Now, if this is not enough, others have answered this question already, because not far away from where we are, there is the Open University of Tanzania. It exists, it's a public university, and that's what we have in Tanzania. You go down south, we have the MIT, UNISA. Many of the universities that we see in South Africa were born out of UNISA. It's huge. And as you can see from the structure itself, it's really impacting lives, not just in South Africa, but Southern Africa, but beyond. And that's what you have in South Africa. They have a national university. Okay, you cross the Indian Ocean, just a few miles away from South Africa, you get to the Open University of Mauritius. At least I was privileged to be there. Just like a number of these that I'm going to talk about this morning. So there also they have an Open University of Mauritius. And it's standing, as you can see, and the whole country is being served from there. Recently, there is a baby that was born. And the Prof said, when I was kind enough to open my eyes, he said, oh, the baby has just been born in the name of Kenya Open University. And there, standing, you can see the beautiful infrastructure just beneath the Open University of Mauritius. Underneath, okay, make my point, I want to just beneath the Kenyan Open University, we have the then, once upon a time called Bokodo, but now Botswana Open University. That is now a university, Open University, public payers money, financing that. Very close home, only divided by the Zambezi River, between ourselves and themselves, we have the Zimbabwe Open University. That's the structure they occupy in Harare. It's huge, it's beautiful, it's elegant, and that's the Zimbabwe Open University. They are just celebrating 25 years of being in existence this year. If this is not enough, you can go even in West Africa. There is the famous NOUN, National Open University of Nigeria. It's huge. It's, as you can see from that little shot. So this is what others have done in the past, having answered the question that we asked. The need for us to open the doors of higher education cannot be achieved using the four walls. We need to open up and do that using public payers money. It works better that way. But if we leave it in the private sector, it doesn't sometimes. It doesn't. Why? We have different focus areas. In the private, perhaps it's more on profit making. In the public, it's more on service, so that we develop our country. So this should begin to ring bells with those vignettes. Now, here, the main issues that we will talk about, or the ones that we've already talked about even in this symposium so far, found their prominence even during the time of the Bobby Wire Commission inquiry, who was tasked with the responsibility of trying to find ways in which they could find a lasting solution to issues of exclusion in higher education, so that education is accessible to all, so that no one is left behind, because everyone matters equally. Anyway, so in their recommendation, 1998, encapsulated there was the National Open University, except they couldn't agree on one premise, where this National University was going to be housed. It became a bit multi, and unfortunately it couldn't see the light of day. But suffice to mention that that came through a white paper publication of 1998. I'm sure these records can still be searched and found in the archives. But what that meant was, if only we had it and followed through those recommendations, as was recommended in that white paper, this time around we're not going to make this presentation. Maybe we're going to make another presentation looking at other areas, but it suffices to revisit it. Now, the education environment there perhaps may not be very close to what we have now, because our issues have evolved and become much more complex. But the need becomes even much more urgent, because with the free primary education, as we have it now, before long we will see this graduating to a point where they will need tertiary education, and we will not be able to accommodate them in our very existing universities. You know that. We have close to about 60 universities registered under the Higher Education Authority. But despite all that, other commentators have said the absorption rate is just around 4%. Those who are leaving secondary school and then finding their residence at higher education is very minute. The rest have to just find other things to do. Why? The space is restricted. Much more for those who may be, differently able. It becomes even much more difficult. So we need to think, and we need to think very quickly. If you looked at our current arrangement in terms of higher education, we have in this country what we call dual modes. So you have, within the same university, two parallel systems running side by side, but using the same resources. It works, but only to a certain extent. But in terms of the real net impact, it's very negligible. Unfortunately, as you saw in the 4% that others have highlighted as our absorption rate. So we really need to think way beyond, and I'll show you what others have done, so that you begin to understand when we say, what would be the net impact if we had one ourselves, compared to the others, of course, that are already in the front pioneering. So, what are the net benefits? It's a given. There will be increased accessibility. In terms of everyone accessing this national gate, you are assured we will be able to cater in for the remote places. They will study in the comfort of their homes. There will be no need for them to walk distances and come and scrounge for limited spaces in urban centers. Then you will be able to have real meaning for open and distance education. Affordability is assured because of the economies of scale. So here, the ethos is thriving on huge numbers, reducing on the cost of expenditure, and then it means you are reducing even on the tuition fee on the part of the students. It works well even for those who are working, and the majority of our people are working in one or the other. So they can still continue their education whilst they are earning something for their livelihood. That can only be assumed and assured if only we have a national open university, because everyone else will then welcome. Flexibility here is a given. Because of the self-directedness, materials are self-paced. It caters for the wide range of citizenry, and it works well. There's divergence in terms of cost offering according to the market needs. That's what we find in open universities. Now, if this is not enough, if those examples that we gave as vignettes are not enough, look again. I'm saying look again at what others have done beyond Africa. Those are several countries with their state universities that are financed on public payers' money, and they are being very fine in terms of numbers. According to Wikipedia 2024, this source you can Google it and you'll find it. So you see, at the top end of this, I just want to talk about just one or two, that's all. Indira Gandhi University in India has to the tune of about 7 million students studying. Can you imagine? One single university, 7 million. That's huge, just one. And that's what we want to see. Just here down South Africa, I think for some time now they've been oscillating around 400,000 students. It's a mega university as well. 400,000 students, UNZA. So that's what an open university does. So the net impact is assured in terms of numbers swelling, but accessing the national cake. Then we are sure we can develop our country based on knowledge and not ignorance. So what are the implementation strategies for Zambia that we can begin to fathom to help ourselves out of our quagmire? Government need support. There is need for support. There is need for a policy framework that will help us quickly actualize this vision. And the quicker we do it, the better for our posterity. There is need to invest a lot more in the technology. I think this has already been said. Assistive devices and many of those tools must be brought on board. Then we can achieve. But this can only be done not just using the resource envelope from government. We call upon partners from all walks of life to come and rally behind this clearing call so that we have this actualized like yesterday. If we can, surely we would have helped our country a great deal. There is need for us to focus on curricular development that will speak to this. There is need for capacity building. You'll notice there are very few who are experts in open and distance education as a discipline. Majority of us think if we take you to a 1 week, 2 week workshop where we give you those rudiments, then you have expertise in open and distance education. No, sir. That's just a little dot. It's huge a profession. So please, there is need for capacity building. But when we have a national university, the beauty is we are bringing on board all those that we have on board already in this country. We've been educated elsewhere outside the country. And then we can nicely create a working synergy in one space. And we'll have a huge impact on our country in terms of the education at higher level. This does not then negate what we are doing in the current dispensation. The universities will continue existing. Your market share will still remain. This, what it does is, it eats even in the spaces beyond our boundaries. So no need to worry about maybe this will mean the doom of 1 or 2 universities. No, not at all. If that was the case, surely most of those universities in South Africa should have been closed by now. With 400,000 students under UNZA, but they are still thriving and doing very well. So no need to worry. I thought I would allay your fears. Because those are some of the things sometimes we confront, fear of the unknown. Quality assurance, it will be properly done there. Because you are in one single mode as opposed to a dual mode, where sometimes we put on a jacket of the conventional as we do business in the E-space or ODL space. Unfortunately, it doesn't help. So you are moving with brakes on, and in the end, you are not seeing real dividends. So then, quality assurance, you know it will truly work in the E-space, ODL space. So, what are the potential challenges where we will not just get into this thinking is all rosy? There are real issues on the ground. The digital divide is real between the rural and urban. The connectivity. Here, for the 2 days that we've been here, we've enjoyed internet. because it's at the click of a button, it's already open. Before you even click, it has already opened. That's how fast internet is, and this is how it ought to be all over the country. If we can only attend this, surely we should be able to then talk about e-learning. There's quality and credibility will be assured. I mean, those are challenges. The issues of quality and credibility. We still have doubt in Thomas, who think, well, not distance. But we will still need to go. As we leave this place, we will be telling each other from the voice that we heard of our guest of honor yesterday. He was sending us into the world, in the field. Go ye therefore and preach the gospel of open and distance education, baptizing them, that they believe in what we believe in, and then we can see real dividends in the vine, hopefully not very far away from now. So resistance to change is real, but it only begins with us. If only ourselves can be convinced that this is the way to go, because others have already walked the road and we've seen what dividends lie ahead if we took the same path ourselves. So that resistance, we need to break loose out of it and help those that need to be helped to begin to sing from the same hymn book as we see things. And then we'll see clearer future for our country at higher education level in terms of absorption rate and people being exposed to higher education. So let's confront those potential areas. As I conclude, what we've talked about this morning is provoke you to begin to entertain a thought of an open university in this country under public affairs money, like others have done around the globe. And we've seen the net impact, if that was the case in this country. Many models already exist that are thriving, that we can ride on. So it's up to us to seize the opportunity and do the needful. And no one will do it, it's not a given. It's ourselves to ensure that this is actualized. If we fold our hands and think someone will just wake up one day and just issue a verdict that now we shall have, and we remain seated, it will not happen. Unfortunately, it will not. We need movers and shakers to seize the moment, to revisit what was agreed in the Bobby Wire Commission report of 1998, ensuring that very soon we have our National Open University stand as a cornerstone for our education. Then we should be smiling. I foresee, not far away from here, a National Open University. Maybe it will be called the Open University of Zambia. Maybe it will be called. I'm just visualizing. And that may be the acronym. I'm not sure who's. Maybe it will be called Zambia Open University, meaning so. But we have an equivalent in Zimbabwe. So I know this will be short to us, so that we avoid the mixture of nomenclature. Maybe it will be called National Open University of Zambia. Now, it's closer to what is in Nigeria. Closer to what is in Nigeria. So I foresee this. I don't know what you foresee yourself. I beg to end here. Thank you.
So, Prof, thank you so much for that presentation, and I want to believe we can appreciate him resoundingly. So at this point, after those powerful keynote speeches, I know we've been left, some of course are wondering, some are still trying to digest, and some have been left with so many questions. So at this point, we'll engage with our speakers, and we'll have reflections. And this session will have Dr. Bolton to carry us through, and we can ask a few questions to our keynote speakers. Dr. Bolton, please.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Very good to see you again in this place. She has very well explained what we are going to do. But I do note that our topics this morning are not like the ones we had yesterday. Today's speeches are different. So we will have reflections on both of them, but at different times, so that we can have some kind of flow, good flow. So we will have our reflections first on the presentation that was, the speech that was given by Dr. Wawa, borrowing Professor Smui's suggestion. So Dr. Wawa gave us a very powerful speech on effective inclusion of persons with disabilities in open distance education at all levels in Zambia, and gave us a number of personal experiences that he has had. I now want to encourage us to discuss, ask questions, and also just bring some thoughts that could have been provoked as a result of his speech. We are going to have 5 minutes for us to do that. Then we are going to have another 5 minutes to discuss the second speech. I open it up now. Where's my MC with Oh, okay. Okay, so we have a hand up behind there. I can see one. Is there another one? Okay, second here. 3. Okay, so we will take 3. Or maybe we take 4. I'm going to see 4 hands. We'll take the 4 questions or the 4 contributions and we close. Then we'll move on to the next one. So you can go, Sam.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brian. Good morning, to borrow the words of Director Dr. Wawa. I must first of all start by appreciating the fact that you've been a very good advocate. My question, you talked about assistive devices as well as the adaptive devices. Coming from an angle of an instructional designer and looking at you have been talked about materials production and inclusion, it being inclusive at all levels. Now, restricting myself to early and primary education, the blended learning that is usually done is using radio or TV as a tool to actually blend the learning. And then now the issue is on the assistive device. For the visually impaired, what advocacy are you doing in this regard? I don't want to put myself on the spot as one who's been one of those writers of those materials. In 2005-2006, I'm very aware that UNZA are working with Dr. Kalabula and Dr. The one was at FRA, Kafuabulola. You did a lot of advocacy around inclusive education and provision of materials, teaching and learning resources. What is DRW doing in that regard? I thank you.
So we can have, there was the hand at the back there. Yes, let's have that question. And please make your contributions straight to the point.
Thank you very much. Smuiza is my name, from Dollar Skills. Of course, I shared some time with Dr. Waluya some time back. My thought has just been provoked because having attended this symposium, I've been equipped to go and send the message that the ministry is actually asking me. But my question has always been, when I look at the problems that we're having in our country, we're looking at value addition, we're looking at things looking at agriculture, and I look at the materials that we produce and the scholars that are here. Do we have anyone who's querying to find out the correlation between our materials that we have currently that we are teaching in schools as compared to the problems that the country is having? I've heard on several podia where the president has talked of diversifying the economy from what it currently is to go into agriculture, to go into value addition, polishing the emeralds. Now, when we question our material that we're giving to schools, are we finding that material within the textbooks? That's my submission.
Actually, we can just clap and just encourage ourselves. Thank you. We can have the third question, or is it a contribution, whatever it is? There was a hand. Oh, no. It was Professor. Yeah, and then him. So we get him first, and then we come to Professor Strawe. There.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
This is Max McQueen from Sioma Secondary. My suggestion is that let it be policy by the government for all learning institutions, including secondary schools, where there are no known persons with disabilities, because inclusiveness can only be possible if we are able to identify the persons with disabilities. Now, in an event where an institution doesn't have persons specialized in those areas, it is difficult sometimes for the instructors or the teachers to identify the persons with learning disabilities. Hence, it becomes difficult for inclusiveness to be achieved. Thank you.
The last one here. Then after the last contribution, we are going to ask Wawa to respond before we get the reactions to the second speech.
I'm Richard Siachwin. I retired from the Zambian Open University as Vice Chancellor last year. And mine is just a piece of information in response to Wawa's concern that institutions don't have facilities for disabled people. At the Zambian Open University, there's a department of special education, which does not only provide courses in special education, but ensures that there are facilities and adaptive technologies for people with disabilities. I thought I should inform you on that.
Thank you very much for that information. I now ask Dr. Wawa to respond to the reactions. So we do have three, since Professor Siachwena's contribution was information provision. So we have a question from Brian, who talks about assistive and adaptive devices. And his question actually is centering on what advocacy you have been doing in line with disabilities, in line with people with disabilities, around those devices.
Okay, thank you very much for those insights. I'll begin with the prior. Yes, when I was given the keynote speech, I said I will move away from academia and give a perspective from an activist point of view. And my response still will be from an activist point of view. Although sometimes we are academia, but I prefer to be an activist all the time. worked with the late Dr. Kalava. He saw Professor Mony here when he was just coming from Manchester. We've been working together around that until he joined the University of Zambia. So, having seen that, very little is happening in the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Science and Technology, in terms of bringing about assistive technologies and adaptive technologies. We have chosen to be more radical. The word radical sounds very, very strong, but that's the right word. So we are appearing before the Office of the Public Protector, Disability Resort versus the Minister of Education. I'll end there because it is in the hand of the legal system.
So there's also one issue that was raised by Mr. Smaza from Ndola Skills.
Yes, what was the issue?
The issue is materials, the materials that we have used.
Yes. Actually, it's all because of that. We have got one line. Let me mention to say that there is this talk of the two-tier system in the education system, the academic and the vocational. But both in the academic stream and the vocational stream, you'll find that the materials which we are giving to the schools are not in line with the theory we give the schools, especially for persons with disabilities. We have got no materials which are aligned to the talk, especially when you come to vocational training. We don't have those materials. And then I take note of my retired colleague from Zambia Open University. I've visited that place. It's quite good, and I've got a lot of colleagues who have graduated from there. But I emphasized the issue of persons with disabilities who require more intensive support. There is no institution in Zambia which can train a person with a profound intellectual impairment. But we have taken a pilot. We have taken a girl from Livingstone to go through school, and now she's doing her degree in community development at UNZA College of Education. She writes her exam by telling a lecturer, asking her questions verbally, and then she talks to the person, giving answers, and then they write and give to another person to mark. And she is passing because we are talking about education to give skills and upgrade yourself in terms of I've got a degree status, rather than what Professor Mony said, education is life. So for persons with intellectual impairments, education is not about upgrading their status. It is about dignity, rights, and life.
Thank you very much. There was one, the last one that is from Sioma. Somebody from Sioma on policy direction.
Yes. In fact, we always say inclusion is not about taking learners with disability into a school. So that where there is a learner with a disability, that's when we make adjustments. Inclusion is about an environment which is ready for everybody. So we must have an educational system, educational infrastructure, educational instructors who are ready for all at all times, not adjusting a system because a person has gone in. No. Let's adjust the whole educational system to absorb everybody at every time.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. I think I end here for the first speech because we've actually gone beyond the 5 minutes and eaten into the second session of our reflections. So I will only take 2 reactions to the second speech that was given by Professor Mony over the Diamond, what does he call it? Diamond anniversary. That's it. Diamond anniversary, the case of Open University for Zambia. So there is a hand up there. There's another one there. I said 2. Okay, I can take 3, but I can't see another hand. So we'll take those 2.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, we'll take 2 and then conclude before.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Copperbelt from Sunningdale University. I just want to pick on the conclusion from Professor Simoy. There is nothing difficult to transform something. The University of Zambia gave birth to Copperbelt University. That is one way we can go in order to establish an open university for the nation. Why not transform the institute under University of Zambia into an open university, other than to wait for other infrastructures, when that institute has the infrastructure which can readily be converted? That is my take. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's that hand behind, just behind you.
Once again, this is Brian. Professor, you talked about demystifying the whole concept of OTL. Yesterday, in our session there, it's attached to what you have just talked about. There was a concern from a graduate, PhD, during the time that they were doing the graduation ceremony. The issue of saying the IDE students graduating on their own, and yet, for example, if they've done something...
Straight to the question, Brian, we have no time.
Okay, issues of demystifying, what is the institution doing? And then secondly, the synchronous learning, what is the institution doing regarding inclusion for persons with disability? Thank you.
Sorry, the last one, is it related to the Open University we are talking about?
Yes.
Oh. That sounds like it was meant for Wawa. All right, I'll ask Professor Mony to dismantle that.
Thank you so much. I should have answered down there. Yes, it is on. So I'll start with Brian. What are we doing as IDE to ensure that we accommodate all those that need to go to school, regardless of their circumstance? We have quite a number of our students who have since graduated now in the public sector working. One was almost a replica of what Dr. Wawa was talking about. We had to do a lot of adjustments to ensure that she goes through, and we are glad she was one of those that were graduating based on the results. But now it's a foregone conclusion she's graduated. There are many, time does not suffice for me to list each one of them, with divergent individual conditions. But we've had to literally go out of our way, because we understand there's no other way other than to make adjustments, not to the student to fit into our existing system, but to ourselves, so that they too are welcome. So that's exactly what we're doing, and we're proud to do that. The first question is a very complex question. Why? Because in the traditional circles, the indigenous knowledge teaches us that ukwapa, ukwapa. You understand ukwapa? This will never be on top there. And that's how life is, eh? So there are certain things that unfortunately we may not be competent enough to talk about. But if you saw in our recommendation, we were saying there should be a commission of inquiry, that a task force that should be put in place perhaps through the Minister of Education. And if the our Honorable Minister of Education sees this moment to put into motion that particular task force, they will look at the pros and cons of whichever modus operandi works for this country. In so far as ushering in an open, national open university is concerned, we may not prescribe ourselves to say go this route and transform this unit into a no. I think then we'll be negating that wisdom. Kwapa,
Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, I want us to put our hands together for our two keynote speakers. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Otto. I hope my mic is perfect. Thanks. So we close for our morning session. We're breaking off for a healthy break. And after a healthy break, we'll break into the 3 sessions we're having today. So instead of coming here, sorry, I missed that one. We're supposed to hand over gifts to our keynote speakers, and I have Madam Chalimbana to do that. Madam, please.
Please may our keynote speakers just come to the front as they receive the gifts from the organizing committee. Just in front of the podium there, facing the audience, because we shall request for a group photo with the Director, IDE Director Dode, and the keynote speakers. Right in the middle there, just Bonus Mui, and then the presentation will be done. Thank you. For our 2 directors, let's join the keynote speakers for a group photo. And I'll take the privilege to join them too.
Go sir. These are the privilege.
I like that.
Okay, just a bit, move a bit that side. A bit. Wawa, to the right. Okay. We know that in Siangomo you move very easily. Yes. Thank you. So, cameraman, the other side, we just turn. We face the other side. We capture the audience with us. Director, just a bit behind. Okay. There. Thank you. Yeah, let's smile. Sireji. Leave the background. I hope you are checking the background too. Our members should be part of the photo. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, delegates. Just a few housekeeping announcements for those of you that have just joined us. The conveniences are on the corridor outside. They are easily accessible, so Wawa is not worried. Thank you. Very accessible. As we go for our health break, please, let us kindly ensure that we do one thing which was requested of us from a paper that was presented by Professor Jemima and Professor Simoy in the aspects of value development. Observation is key, and doing is actually more paramount. So please, yesterday I did note that by the time we're leaving this place, even when I requested that we leave it better than we found it, we had more lunch packs in here than the people that attended. So please, let's go for our health break. But as we come and choose to go wherever we're going to be convenient to eat from, let's ensure that we do the needful of taking back the lunch pack from where we got it from. That way we would have developed our values even at a greater pace by doing. Thank you very much. Let's enjoy our break. Director IDE, kindly lead Wawa. It's inaccessible. Somebody will help you from here. So I'll excuse Director IDE and Director Disability Rights Watch. Thank you so much.